Good evening, everybody. I hope you all can hear me. And my name is Pratik Agarwal. I'm one of the lead instructor for today's live bootcamp on how to use SQL as a data engineer. And in the three-session bootcamp that we have planned for you all, today's today's bootcamp would be focused on using SQL as a data engineer, and tomorrow's workshop would be focused on the entire data engineering pipeline using Python and some of the cloud tools as well that you will see. And day after, don't miss that session, because I will walk you through what are the job prospects, how can one prepare for data engineering role, which are the companies which hire typically in the world of data engineering. And so do try to attend all the three sessions so that you can also get certified. All right, guys, so that was just a quick introduction on what to expect in the three sessions that we will have together. At any point of time, if you have any question, you can use the chat message to ping me, and I'm monitoring the chat message as well. So do feel free to ping in the chat message also if you have any questions. I want to make sure that you guys consider this as a live workshop where you can also ask questions, and so we'll keep it like that. All right, guys. So let's start with what data engineers do and where do SQL fit into various different pipelines of data engineering. So data pipeline has 5 stages grouped into three heads. One is data engineering, one is analytics and machine learning. In fact, the entire data pipeline I'm talking about in any large firm. So one is data engineering, analytics and machine learning, which we normally call it as data science, and the delivery and the presentation of the data, which is also a part of data science. 50% of work effort, man hours, if you were to say, goes into first phase, which is what we will focus on in the 3-session bootcamp that we have. As you can see, in data engineering, there are a few most important things that we do, which we call it as collection, ingestion, and preparation. Now, what is the meaning of collection? Collecting the data from different sources. For example, if you look at Swiggy, they may get orders from their web portals, they may get orders from phone, they may get orders from apps, right? So the data could come to Swiggy database from multiple different sources, right? So that is called as collecting the data from different platforms. Imagine you use Amazon, so you can order from their web portal, you can order from their app. You can also order from third-party services, or you can also order from their Instagram portal. So all those different places would be part of this part. I mean, to ensure that the data comes correctly in the right manner from different sources. All right. So that's data collection, the first part of data engineering. The second is ingestion. Ingestion meaning that you see, when the data comes, right? How are you going to stream or send from these different sources to its destination? And the destination could be a data repository like a database, could be a data warehouse, could be a data lake, it could be any of these, right? So the idea is that here, when we are ingesting the data from different sources, it could come as packages like data packets, which we call it as blobs, or it could be live streams, like for example, when we watch cricket matches on Hotstar and similar platforms, right? So all that data needs to go into large data repository infrastructure, and that is something that we call it as a data lake, which could be a collection of your structured data, unstructured data. That means your text files, your video files, your transaction data, all different kinds of data can be hosted in a large data ecosystem, which we call it as a data lake. Now, preparation is where a lot of our time also goes as a data engineer, because this is where we perform something called as ETL or ELT, extract, transform, load, and we will see some demonstration of that as well in today's workshop, which is basically to clean the data, shape it, wrangle it, transform it, catalog it, basically make the data ready for the data science team to consume it, create reports, create machine learning models, and so forth. So essentially here, the purpose is to make the data ready to consume by the next phase of people, which is machine learning engineers or data scientists, as we call them, right? Here, when we prepare the data, generally we end up storing the data in the data warehouse or data lake, which is a summarized version of your data. So we'll spend a lot of time in data preparation as well today. And then the next phase is of analytics and machine learning, the typical data science, we call it, the visualization, the presentation part of how we show it on the app and so forth. So these are the different parts of data engineering. And I've got a very good image, which I took it from Mr. Satish Chandra's blog, which is very nicely, which nicely presents, what happens in the entire data pipeline. Collection, which is coming from different sources, ingestion, depending upon whether it is transactional data, whether it is a stream data, you essentially bring them together. It goes into a data lake, which is a data, you can imagine like a large repository of structured and unstructured data. And then from there, we start preparing, cleaning it, making sure that it is ready to be consumed by the machine learning engineers and the data scientists. And then from there, we can go for visualization on an app or maybe just a dashboard, a data dashboard. So this is what the entire pipeline, the data pipeline as we call, looks like. Okay. And in the 3 sessions that you would have, you would get actually a lot of good understanding of the phases which are part of data engineering. And if you want to know what data scientists do after getting the data, there are a lot of videos on IvyProSchool's YouTube channel, and you can always refer to them. All right, so we will focus on the collection, ingestion, and the preparation part in our workshop. Now, here in today's workshop, the focus is on working with SQL and do some of the things which we normally do as a data engineer using SQL. So what I've done is that FIFA time is the FIFA World Cup going on. So I've taken the liberty of taking a rather simple data from FIFA's official website of the different matches of not this World Cup, but of the last World Cup, because this World Cup is still going on, so we do not have enough data. It just started. So I've taken the liberty of downloading some data from FIFA's official data site for Russia 2018 FIFA World Cup that we had the last World Cup. And I'm going to share this link with you all in the chat window. Please go ahead and download. So when you open this link, you will find there are 2 files given here. One is a CSV file, which is the data file, and one is a .SQL file, which is the SQL script that we will be using today. Now, so please go ahead and download as we move on. We will definitely be using it. Now, I assume that some of you must be very, very new to SQL. Okay, if you're very, very new to SQL, I'll just give you a quick understanding of what SQL is used for. Remember, we spoke about the fact that the data goes and gets saved in data repositories, in a data infrastructure, which we call it as data lake. And it also would have structured data repositories or databases, as we call them. Whenever you have to do anything with the data stored in a database, you need the language which databases speak, and that is what structured query language is, which is commonly called as SQL or SQL. Okay, so it's an open source, free to use by anybody language, not owned by any company. Was designed by a couple of computer research scientists from IBM back in 1970s, but now it is open source. All the database management software companies use SQL or comply with SQL. So as a data engineer, if you know SQL, then you can work with almost any kind of database management softwares. And that's one of the main reasons why SQL is also very, very famous, because it's universal, it is open source. So SQL happens to be one of the top 3 skills that a data engineer should have. Okay, you would see in the most of the job description, SQL would always be there. Now, what is SQL used for? Inserting, extracting, manipulating data from database. Any instruction that we have to send to the database management software will use SQL for it. It is a common tool, as I said. It is used by data engineers. It's also used by machine learning engineers. It's used by data scientists. It's used by data visualizers. Without knowing SQL, it is very, very difficult to work in the data pipeline in any of the phases. It's one of those common language. This SQL and I would say Python, which is very, very commonly used across all phases of the data pipeline. So it becomes extremely important to understand and know SQL very, very good if you want to work in any of the phases of data pipeline, especially if you want to work as a data engineer. So it is accepted universally. That's one of the reasons why it is famous. Common language across all database management software is very easy. It was designed for non-technical users. So if you know English, you can actually easily pick up SQL. Is one of those computer science language which is extremely easy for anybody to understand. There is a body called as American National Standard Institution, NSI, which governs SQL protocol, right? I mean, which kind of decides, okay, what are the main commands that are allowed, main syntaxes, structure of SQL language, and which all the database management software companies kind of comply with. SQL statements are divided into multiple types: DDL, database design language statement, data manipulation language statement, and data control language statement. And there is one more, which is called as transaction control language statement. As a database administrator, you definitely need to know all 4 types. But as a data engineer, you end up spending a lot of time in the DDL statements. You do spend time in the DML statement as well, but most of your time goes into DDL and DML, especially, DDL, DML statements is where you will end up spending a lot of your time as a data engineer. So you've got to be at least very, very good in these things, in addition to a few other things that one has to do while using SQL as a data engineer. We will see that under data definition language statement, these statement covers those commands in SQL which will help you design the entire database and alter the design as well. So we'll see some of these. We'll definitely see create. I don't think we'll have enough time to see all of them, but we'll definitely see a few of them. You will get a very good idea of how we design a database, how do we create a database, how do we create a table in that database, and so forth. Data manipulation language statement, as the name suggests, allows you to insert the data, insert rows into the table, update existing data, and delete data from the tables, or delete rows from the table. It also has one more very, very important command called a select statement, which helps you to query the data or read the data or extract the data. So when we say read, extract, query, this is what this means. Okay. Data control language statement, some of the examples would be grant, revoke commands, which basically are used by database administrators to grant access, to revoke access to the users of the databases. So generally, we also have database administrator who to take care of the IT stuff, and that's what the data control language statement allows you to do. So that's the quick overview of SQL. I want to spend more time in the hands-on part of it, practical part of it, because I believe that you will learn significantly more if you actually run some of the commands and you see things happening in action. But I will take a minute here and ask you, any questions so far on whatever we have discussed? Anybody? Any questions at all? Anybody? I see a lot of people who have joined in. Any questions at all? All right, in the meantime, you ask the questions. I would again remind you guys, you must have received one email from us whereby you would have gotten instructions on how to install MySQL Workbench in your own local machine. Who all have done that? Or maybe I should ask who all have not done that. All right, Bhuvi has asked one question: what level of Python is required to work with SQL? Well, Bhuvi, I mean, to work with SQL, you don't really need to know any Python. You don't need to know any Python, but a lot of times what happens is from within Python as well, you can fire or you can run SQL statements. So a lot of times you'll see that, we end up using SQL in Python codes as well. But yeah, I mean, in order to just use SQL, you don't need any other language, just SQL is fine. Great. Now, assuming that most of you would have installed the MySQL Workbench, the database client that we'll use, and the MySQL database server, where we will actually create the database, I'm assuming that most of you would have done, or at least I'm going to assume that you would have installed the client, which is MySQL Workbench. If you have not done that also, I will just still give you that link. You can easily, so if you just Google MySQL Workbench download, depending on the operating system that you're using, whether it is Mac OS, whether it is Linux, you can choose your operating system and you can go ahead and download. Don't worry about 32-bit or 64-bit. Go ahead and download whichever one is available. It doesn't take a lot of time. Just go ahead and download this one. Don't worry about 64-bit. Even if you have 32-bit machine, it should work. Okay. All right, great. So you can download the MySQL Workbench, which is the client. That's the client with which, or the browser with which we will interact with the database server. I'm also going to assume that some of you must have had some difficulty installing the database server, the MySQL database server. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to give you the credentials for my database, which is running on AWS Cloud, Amazon Web Services Cloud, and we will use MySQL Workbench to connect to it, AWS Cloud platform, where I've already installed a database, created a database. You can also do it. I'm going to give you one more video from IvyProSchool's YouTube channel, where you can actually go and create your own account, a free tier account on Amazon Web Services Cloud platform, and create your own MySQL database or host your own MySQL database there on AWS Cloud. That way, you are not installing anything locally in your machine, and your machine remains, your local machine, your laptop or a desktop remains more or less, free, right? You're not dependent upon your local machine, and that's typically how most of the companies nowadays work with. That they end up installing the databases on cloud, whether it is Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud Platform or Windows Azure. These are three very, very famous cloud platforms which allow you to host your databases there. So I'm going to give you instructions at the end of the workshop as well as to how you can create your own AWS account if you're interested. But yes, there is a caveat there. You will have to give your credit card or a debit card information. But first year is free. And in my video, I have also discussed the strategies so that the likelihood of you getting charged in that 1 year time period would be very, very low. Alrighty, good. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the questions. Okay, so the task that we will perform is, I'm going to list down the task over here. Okay, yeah, so the task that we will perform right now, let's note it down over here. Task we will perform today. I like to write my task. I do have slides on it, but I'm not a very big slide guy. I don't like to use a lot of slides in my trainings. So the task that we perform is that we will create a connection with the MySQL database, which I have hosted on AWS Cloud. Okay. In order to create a connection, and the reason why we want to create a connection is that we will basically do whatever we will do with SQL. We'll do it on the database which is hosted on AWS Cloud. However, we will use MySQL Workbench, which is the client, to connect with the MySQL database server, which is hosted on AWS Cloud. Okay, so that's the pipeline that we'll talk about. Okay, remember, guys, there is a server machine where you actually create the database, right? Where you actually host your database. Imagine this box represents a server, and then you have a client software which is installed locally in your own machine, which is called as MySQL Workbench, which is the official client, not the only client, but official client. So this is your server and this is your client, right? And the client can be installed anywhere. It could actually be installed on your smartphone as well. But the server, normally we end up installing on cloud. You can also install locally. If you followed the instruction that I gave you before the class started, then you would have understood how to install it locally as well. That also you can do, or you can also connect to the database which is installed on a cloud platform. All right, so we'll have to establish a connection from MySQL Workbench to the MySQL database server, which is created and hosted on AWS Cloud, right? We will see what are the steps that we'll perform here. We'll see that also. So that's the first task that we'll perform. The second task that we'll perform is, once we establish the connection, then we will understand that then we will actually do something called as data cleaning on FIFA 2018 match or goals data. Okay, so we'll understand that what are the things that we will do here. So we will create a database, we will create tables, right? We will import data, and then we will clean the data. We will not be able to see all the cleaning aspects because we just have 60 minutes, but we'll see one of the couple of cleaning aspects, and then we will also try and see how we can transform the data. Okay, transform the data so that you get, and then we will see how we can load the transform data into the database again. That means data is clean, it is changed, and now we want to save the clean data into the database, right? So you get the complete picture of ETL. Okay, so you'll be able to then get the complete picture of ETL. Which is, so these are the 3 steps which are part of ETL. Okay, so we'll do all of this today, and if time permits, then we will see if we can do any other things. Right now, how do we create a connection with the MySQL database hosted on AWS? To create any connection with any database hosted, whether locally in your local desktop or laptop or on a cloud, the process kind of remains the same. You need a URL of the host machine, either local machine or cloud machine, right? URL of the host machine, that means the link, the login credentials, that means the login and the password. Then you would need pretty much it actually. That's it. That's what you would need. I mean, ideally, you should also know the database name that you want to connect to, because in a cloud, in a database server, you can create multiple databases, but this is optional. If you have the root access, you can actually access the entire database very quickly. Okay, now because I'm going to give you a login ID, which will have admin access, that means the root access. Please do not create please create what I want to say, please don't drop the databases. Okay, just create the database with your name and then don't drop others databases. We'll see that what that means. All right, let's look at what we want to do here. So in order to connect to the database, what we will do is we will open something called as MySQL Workbench. Now, if you're using Windows machine, what you just need to do is that go to Windows search for something called as MySQL Workbench. MySQL Workbench, that is the client name. And when you open this MySQL Workbench, it takes a couple of moments to open depending upon the speed of the machine, the processor. And be patient, it will open. And so it will open like this. It will say the official graphical user interface tool or the client to connect to the database, MySQL databases, right? It is just one of them though. There are many other client software with which you can connect to the database, all right? As you can see, I've got a lot of connection files. So we will see how we can create a connection file. What I've done is that I've already created one connection file. I'll just copy a couple of things here. So this is the host name or the URL. So I will just put it onto a notepad. This is the URL. The host URL, that is, and the login. This is IV, right? It's not LIV. So this is the URL, and this is the login details. I have shared it in the chat window also. Now, how do we use it, right? Let's see how we can use it. In order to create a connection using MySQL Workbench, when you open, then you will see MySQL connection and you'll see a plus button. Go ahead and click on this plus button. And when you click on the plus button, you'll get a connection name here. You can give any connection name. Since we are connecting to a cloud one, so I'll go to write cloud, AWS, and let's say boot IvyProSchool, something, you can literally write anything. Data engineer, of course, you will not write such a big name. Let the connection method be TCP/IP, which is the connection method with which we connect to any internet. I mean, any website on the using internet. Host name. Now, if it was a local machine, if it was a local server, then this is the host IP address. This is the host URL. Either you can write 127.0.0.1 to connect your local database server, or you can also write localhost without any space in it. But we do not want to connect. Right now, I'm not connecting with my local database. I'm connecting with Cloud One. I've given the URL. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to copy that URL, the host URL. This is the URL that I got after setting up the database, after creating the database instance on AWS Cloud. So I'm going to give you, as I said before, I'll give you the instructions for creating your own AWS account and hosting a database there. The username is going to be admin, and for password, click on store and bold, and I'll give the password, and then I press OK. Now here, this default schema basically means the database name that you want to connect. Now here, what this don't worry about this name here. It basically means the database that you want to connect to. But here, since I've got admin access, so I've got root access, that means I've got all the access. So I will connect to the entire database server, even if it had 100 databases, I'll have connection, or I would have access to all the databases which are there. Okay. Okay, very nice. Now, okay. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to click on test connection, which will make sure that my connection with my, so it will make sure that my host machine is working wherever it is there, whether it is local or on the cloud, and the login ID and the credentials are clear. So this is what it is. And then I click on OK, and then what it will do is that it will create a connection file like this. It'll create a tile, a rectangle box like this. And the reason why it gets created is that so that next time when you want to connect to this database server, you do not have to give the login ID, password, the URL, all of it again. Just think of it as saving your login credentials on Chrome or any of the Internet Edge browsers that we normally use. So now I want to go ahead and click on this rectangle box that I created, which is the connection file, and then it will establish the connection with the cloud database server that we just created access to. And then it'll open a tab like this. You can see the tab name is the same tab name that I gave at the time of creating the connection. And then it will show me the databases which are already there. The schemas here basically means databases. Schemas here means databases. Right now, there is only one database. It is showing sys, which is the default database. Don't play around with it. Basically, this instance, this database server that I'm working with right now doesn't have any other database in it at all. There is nothing in it. It just, imagine sys is just blank. There is nothing in it, basically, right? And by the way, if you see administration and if you see schema, just click on schemas. Administration is for the database administrators. You can see the server status and all of it. But you can just go to schemas and you can see the list of databases that we would have created. In the database servers, we can create multiple databases. Right now, we have not created any database, and hence it is not there at all. Now, what do you think is the next thing that we will do? Any idea? Anything? Anybody who would like to tell me the next step that I will perform? So what are the steps that we have done so far from the task that we created? We are done with this part, right? Now we have gone into the second part of the session where we'll create a database, create tables, import data, clean the data, transform, and load the transform data back to the database. Got it? So the next logical thing to do is to create a database. Now, here's the thing that I'm going to tell you. Remember, I told you that remember at the beginning of the session today, I gave you a link. This link, if you missed this, here's the link again. This drive link contains two files. One is ending with .sql and one is ending with .csv. .csv is comma separated values file, which is essentially like an Excel file, but it is not a Microsoft formatted file. It can be read into Excel. That means you can open this file in Excel, and most likely when you download this file by default, it will open in Excel. but it can also be opened in a Word file, can Notepad file, Google Sheet. It's not a Microsoft proprietary format. This is an industry common format, very commonly used to migrate the data from one source to another. So I have downloaded this file from the FIFA's official data file, data website, and then I've kind of made some transformation there. And then let's say this is the CSV file. If I open it, it will open it in Excel. So it opens up like this. It has multiple columns. It's always good to see the data file a little bit. So it has multiple columns: ID, home team, away team, stage, whether it was a group stage or some other stage, scorer, who scored in that game, scoring team, and the type. Got it? Now it might so happen that so this is the data, right? So and there are a lot of data like this, approximately some 175 data. So this is the data that we will import. Now this data table has some flaws in it. There are some data which are repeated, and as part of data cleaning, we'll go ahead and try and understand how we can use SQL to do some basic data cleaning, because as a data engineer, this comes under your purview of the tasks that we perform with the data. Now we will go to MySQL Workbench, right? And the first thing that we will do is that I'm going to open that SQL file that I gave you, which is where I have already pre-written the SQL commands, but I'm going to make you go through all these commands again today with me, so that you can try it with me during the session or after the session as well. So in order to open the SQL file that I just shared with you, what you need to do is that you, under Workbench, you need to go to File, and then you will find Open SQL Script. Please do not double click. See, I have downloaded this file. I've downloaded this file. It's already over here, this SQL file in my local machine. However, I'm not going to double click on it. The reason I'm not going to double click on it, that if I double click on it, it will open it in Workbench if you've installed it in your machine. However, when it opens it in Workbench, it opens it as an unconnected format. Look at this, unconnected, which basically means that you have not established the connection with the database server. And still this file will open. But we don't want to do that. We have established the connection with the database server. It's important to establish the connection first. And then after establishing the connection, you go to File, you go to Open SQL Script, and then you want to go to the file. And see, this is how I'm going to open. I've browsed to that particular .SQL file, because whatever SQL scripts that we create using MySQL Workbench, and when you save it, then it gets saved with an extension .SQL. But remember, this .SQL is just like a text file. You can actually open it in text editor, Notepad as well in your machine. But it has, since it is formatted to write SQL in MySQL Workbench or some similar database clients, so that is why the extension is there. But it can be read into Notepad also. So now, if you notice here, I've got the code, and you can zoom in with your if you pinch on your trackpad, pinch out and pinch in, so you'll be able to zoom in and zoom out the font. Okay. Now let's look at this. What is the first thing this means? This basically means / asterisk, and then close it with asterisk / This basically means comment, which is non-SQL statement. It is a comment. Okay. Every computer language has a comment. So this is how we write a comment. Good practice to write a comment. Now here, in line number 2, it says create database if not exist, and the name of the database is FIFA database, and then it ends with a semicolon. So this create database if not exist, this is the command. This is the command of SQL. Create, what are we creating? We're creating a database. If not exist is optional, but good practice to do, because what if this database already existed, right? Then only this will be created. Otherwise, not, right? So it's a good practice to write if not exist. So I'll select this now. And if you notice, here I've given a semicolon, this basically semicolon, which basically means at the end of SQL statement, it's mandatory to give the semicolon. So now here I will select this, and then I will click on this lightning symbol to run this statement, or I can press Control Enter in my computer keyboard. If you're using Mac, then you can press Command Enter to run it. So when I hit on this, over here, says and create database. The database already exists. So some of you might have already started creating it, as I can see, because remember, this is the cloud database server, right? So you guys have started to run this statement, I can see, and that's how these databases are getting created on my cloud database, which is fine. So I would just say one thing, that if you're creating a database, then please write FIFA underscore database and write your name, so that it doesn't get, other users do not get confused. For example, I'm going to write IvyProSchool or IvyPro, and then I'll select it, and I'll run the statement, and then this will not give me the error. So now it has it, and here if I refresh it, so see here there is a refresh button. So if I refresh it, I can see the list of schemas or list of databases getting updated. So this is what we have done. We have created a database, and now this statement will default this database, because you see, as you can see in my database server, I've got so many databases. So I want to use this particular database only, this particular database among the database that I've created. So I'll click on use, and I'll write use and then name the database that I gave. So I'll bring my cursor here if you want to be lazy, and then you can just double click on the you can just drag it actually, and then use this, and then semicolon. Don't forget, this will ensure that this gets highlighted. That means this is the default database now for me, at least in the rest of the statements that I want to run. Again, there is a command. This hyphen is also a way of writing comment, but one line comment, and then there is a space, which means this is line. Create a schema now. The next step in step number 6, line number 6, we will do, what are we doing? Create a schema. Schema basically means design based on the following details. Create a schema. Create a table schema. That means tables design based on the following details. So we're going to create one table here and see which table are we going to create. Why are we creating this table? Because remember, I've got these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got these 7 columns in my table that I want to import. Before importing, best practice is go ahead and create the database design, the table design in the database that you want to import that table. So this is the table schema or table design. And if you notice, these columns, these are the name of the columns, and these are the data type. There's some type of data that each column will store. So as you can see, my first column is ID, which is going to again store a string data type, a text data type, because of FR. Alphanumeric is always string, and then home is also string, away is also string, stage is also string, scorer is also string. So we actually have all string columns here. So we will create 7 string columns: home, away, and ID also. Got the right ID. We'll create 7 columns with these data type, and this is the statement, a DDL statement. Command you can write script to create the table called as match details. So now here, create table if not exist, again similar to what we did earlier. Create table if not exist, and this is the name of the table. It's a good practice to put it under a pair of ticks. Ticks is a symbol before number 1 in your keyboard, just below escape. It's a good practice, not always mandatory, unless if you do not have a space here, then it is not mandatory, but it's always a good practice to put the table names and the database name and the field names under a pair of ticks. Ticks is a symbol before number 1 in your keyboard. Now I am going to create table. This is the name of the table, open bracket, and this is where it will close if you notice here, and then a semicolon. And so here I'll select this. And what is the data type, by the way? ID is the name of the field. The data type is varchar. Varchar meaning variable character. So even though the upper limit that we are assigning is 50, but depending upon the actual data, say for example, FR001 would require only 5 characters. It will allocate only 5 characters. This is a more efficient way of creating the data type for string fields. So ID varchar not null, meaning it cannot be left blank, comma. Home varchar 255 is the upper limit. That's the maximum that you can give to a text field, varchar field in SQL. So not null. basically means that it is mandatory, it can't be left blank. So all the fields are not null and all of them are separated by commas, as you can see, and then semicolon. So, and then I will select this statement, and then I'm going to click on this lightning symbol and go to refresh it here. And I can see so many people have created the database. Very nice, nice, nice. I can see the table. And if I select the table, it will give me the columns as well. And then their data type as we just created over here in the information block. That's a very good way of doing it. Or you can drop down, you can see the columns as well here. Right? Very nice. Now, what is the next thing? We will import the CSV file, that means the data file stored as a comma separated values, along with the table, using the table data import wizard. There are multiple methods to import the data into a database that we design. However, we'll use the table data import wizard to import the data. Now, how do we do that? So some of the steps. So we will learn the steps. So what will we do here? First, right click on the table name, right, in the left hand side navigator in MySQL Workbench. So if I come over here, I right click over here, and then there is an option to import here, table data import wizard, right? So that's what we are looking for. The second step is follow the on-screen prompts. And set map, as we say, map the field and the data types. How? So right click, table data import wizard, browse to the CSV file. This is my CSV file, comma separated values file. Click on open. Next. This doesn't show up properly in my UI, but you know your UI will probably show properly, and create. So I'm going to use the existing table. This is my existing table, FIFA underscore database underscore IvyPro.max details. Very, very important. And then click on next. Then here is where I will map the fields. Moment. Okay, let's try this one more thing. Try this. Give me a moment, guys. If you can. Next. Unknown database. Anybody did my database? Okay, somebody did. Yes, it could take. Let me create it again. Okay. Somehow somebody dropped it. That's a disadvantage of doing under the cloud, which is specially shared. Now we will use the import wizard. Let's try it again. Match details. Next. Yeah, now it is working. ID. Destination column is also ID. These are all mapped. Very good. They're all mapped to the right fields. Next. Show logs if there is going to be any error at all. and then might take some time to do what it is doing. So in the interest of time, what I'll also do is that let this happen, no problem. What I will do is I will open another connection with my local database, okay? Local database server, because on the cloud, it might just take a little bit of time. So I've already created a connection here or with my local database connection, which you can also see localhost. This is the port number, name, I could give anything, but my username was this. And at the time of installation, you would have given a password, which is also given over here. So you can test the connection, it is fine. And then I'm going to click on OK. And then I'm going to create the connection with my local database server, because a lot of people are actually doing it over there. So I will just do it over here. So I'm going to make it default, and then I will create the table also. Okay. Then I will refresh it on this, and I will search so that I know this is the one that we're working with. Has the table created. Very good. And now we will use the import wizard that we were using earlier. It'll be much faster this time because now we are working with local one. This is the browse, the database table. That's the same. Next, mapping done already. Next, show the logs. Next, this see how quickly it imports again, because we are importing it in local machine and not on the cloud. 175 records imported. Next, refresh it. And if you want to see the data that we just imported, then this is where the read statement comes, right? So the question is, how do we read or extract or query the data imported in the match details table? So for that, we use the statement called as command called as select from where. Okay, so select, after that you write the columns separated by comma. From, you write the table name. There you write conditions to filter the rows, if any. It's not mandatory that you have to. Then basic, there are a lot of things to learn here. We'll understand limit to restrict the number of rows to extract, and then semicolon, right? That's the typical construct syntax. So I have written here select from this table, and I've not written any where statement. So select what? Select star basically means select all the columns. So if I write select star here, asterisk, from match details, limit 10, semicolon, that means it'll show me the 10 rows from the table. So it shows me the 10 rows only. See, 10 records imported. You can see the output, 10 records imported. Very nice. And then let's see what are the other things that we will do over here. Now, this is where your data engineering, I mean, all these are part of data engineering also, but this is where you, one of the core tasks with time, a lot of time you end up spending, which is to clean the data. So here we'll see that there are a lot of repeated data as well. Okay. Now, how do I know if there are repeated data? So one of the ways of checking the repeated data is, let's look at this. So select ID and select ID from match details. Here, if I group the data, group meaning you are aggregating at the level of, let's say, ID. That means you're telling database that please, when you extract the data, please group the data by ID, so that if there are multiple repetition of ID, then it will come. How? I will use comma here, because let's say I don't group the data for a moment. If I use ID, comma, let's say what are the different columns that we had over here. Let me see. Refresh it. We got multiple columns here. If you remember, we had extracted ID, home, away, and all of that. So let's say if I say ID, comma, home. So here, if I select and control enter, it will give me ID and comma home. These are the two columns that it has extracted. I'll close this result. But here, what I want to do is that I want to group the data by ID. And then I'm going to use a function, just like Excel has function, SQL also has function. I'm going to use a function called as count. And then I'm going to count how many times ID occurs in this, a particular ID occurs after grouping the data by ID. So I select and run it. So it shows that most of the IDs here occur only once, as you can see. But you will see that some ID, for example, this particular ID is repeating. So this statement here, what it has done is that it has grouped the data by ID. And after grouping the data, so look at the sequence of events that will happen. First, the table will open. It'll go to the table and it will group the data by ID, right? And then it'll go to select statement and give you ID, and then it'll give you the number of times ID has occurred. Each ID has occurred. As you could see, most of the IDs had occurred only once, but some of the IDs have occurred more than once. So that is going to come over here, right? Now, since now we know which are those IDs which has occurred more than once, so I'm going to use a statement, a condition statement, which is very helpful in putting a condition statement on group data called as having count of ID greater than 1. So let's say if you do not know SQL at all in your life, this is the first time you're looking at SQL, even by reading the statements here, you can actually know what is going on. So select ID, comma, count ID from the match details table, group the data by ID, having count the ID greater than 1. Just remember one small thing here. Even though we write it like this, select from where, but the system runs it a little differently. System executes it in a different sequence. System will first open the table, group the data, then apply a condition, then it'll go to select. Okay, so try and keep that particular point in your mind, that we write it select from where having, but the system reads it a little slightly different. Select comes typically at the end. And then when I do something like this, it will only show me those IDs which are repeating or which are occurring more than once. So when I run this statement, it gives me the list of those IDs. 7 IDs are there which are repeating. That means there are 7 rows essentially in this table which may have duplicate data. And that's what we want to tackle. That's what we want to take care of in this in just now. Okay. Now, there are several methods to remove the duplicate rows in SQL, but we'll go through this one of the simplest methods. In this simplest method, what we will do is that we will first create a table where we will only store the data of those IDs which are, or those rows which have repeated data. If you notice one thing about this, so let's say if I write from match details, right, and if I write ID, comma, or if I write select star, which is essentially give me all the rows of the table. Now, if I write distinct here, if I write distinct star, this means it will only give me those rows which are non-repeating. So right now it gives me 175 rows. Now, if I write distinct, it gives me 168 rows, which basically means 7 rows are repeating, right? Just keep that small point in mind. Okay, we will talk about this again a little later. Now, here, what we'll do is that we'll create a table with non-duplicated rows. How will we create a table with non-duplicated rows? We'll create a table with non-duplicated rows. Any idea how we will create a table with non-duplicated rows? So we'll have to use create statement, because create statement only allows us to create a table. So what I'm going to do is that I'm creating a temporary table called as non-dupe data using the output of this query. Look at this, using the output of this query that we wrote, which gave us the list of non-duplicated rows from the table. So we will use the create statement, and using the create statement, we'll use the output of this query, SQL select query, and it will then end up creating that. So for example, this result that you're seeing right now, which is 168 rows, it will end up taking this data and using this data and create a table using this data called as non-dupe data, and it will have all these columns. When I run this statement, it runs, and if I refresh it, I would be able to see one more table over here called as non-dupe data. And when I select it, I can see the columns. And the best part is if I do select star from non-dupe underscore data, and I limit it to this again, then I can see the data from that non-dupe data table. But remember, this contains non-duplicated data only, right? Now, what we will now do is that we will delete the original table. So how do we delete a table? So we'll use the statement called as drop table and match details. So see how English friendly it is. When I run this statement, and when I refresh it over here, that table is gone. As you can see, there's only one table now, non-dupe underscore data. The table that is gone contained 175 rows, out of which 7 rows were duplicate data. But non-dupe data that is now there contains only non-duplicated data. Is that making sense, everybody? So what we will now do is that we will now rename the non-duplicated table to original table name. So we will alter the non-duplicated table name to the original table name. Is that making sense? And in order to do that, we'll use a statement called as alter table non underscore dupe underscore data rename, and then the name of the new table, which is let's say match details again, because remember match details gone now. And when I run this statement, and then when I refresh it, so look at the name of the table, match details. So very simple, just alter it and then it is done. Now the best part is I can verify, select star from match details again. It's always good to limit, especially when you're working with larger data sets, limit the number of records. So you can see that are there. Now, if I don't limit it, and it'll show me all the rows of the table, then you can see 168 records, and there are no duplicate data. And if I rerun that statement that had given me the list of duplicate data from match details, group the data by ID, having count of ID. Remember the same statement we ran earlier, comma count of ID. That will give me the list. Now it shows nothing because this table doesn't contain any duplicate data anymore. Very simple technique. There are several other methods tests. This is one of the simplest one. So of course, as a smart data engineer, you want to start with the simplest one. So that is one example of data cleaning. I'm going to give you a couple of videos where you can also understand what are the other type of data cleaning method that you can do. Now let's do one more small query. Show the scorer name and how many goals that scorer has scored, right? For every scorer, how much, and then store that data into another table called a scorer. So it is asking us to do two things. First, it is asking us that can you show the name of the scorer and how many goals they have scored? Remember the table name is match details. Group the data by, there was a column here called as, scorer, right? And so remember each row in the table is one goal. So group the data by scorer, and then scorer, comma count of, let's say ID, and then I run this statement and it gives me how many times a scorer repeats in the table, which essentially means how many goals a scorer has done, because every row in that goals underscore data table is actually about one goal that happened in a match, right? So this gives you the total number of goals each scorer scored in a game. And now here, This count ID, I don't like that column name here. I'll just give it an alias name, like a nickname with the help of as, and I'll say that goals. So it shows you that save. Now select statement does not save anything anywhere. It does not update the data at all. It just reads the data and helps you, just show the data as you want to see, but it doesn't make any changes to the table. So now the second part, it says then store this data, store that data into another table. Great. So show the number of goals for each scorer and then show the data, store the data into another table called a scorer. So let's do that. And this is where again, we will repeat the same thing that we learned earlier. Create table, name the table as scorer, right? Scorer, and let's say a scorer. And what will we do? So we will take this script, put it over here, and so create table if ideally if not exist, right? If not exists, yes. Right? Name of the table is that, and then I run this statement, and then I refresh it, and you can see there is a table here called as scorer, and you can check the data from that table. Now here it's that's the name that I gave. So now here you can see it. But here, if you notice, what I've done is check the scoring table, show the data, show the scorer with the highest, with the most goal first. That means sort the data in descending order, decreasing order. So that's what we've done. Order by, it's a new clause that you just learned. Order or sort the data by which column, by goals column, in which order, descending order, decreasing order. If I had written ASC, it would have been ascending order. ASC then would have been ascending order. DESC basically means descending, decreasing order. So you can see Kane, Henry Kane scored the highest in 2018, and then Ronaldo was a third, Mbappe was fourth, and so on forth. Great, guys. So I hope you guys had a great time doing these fundamental tasks that we do as a data engineer. Just to do a quick recap of some of the things that we have done today. What are the things that we did today? So we learned how to create a connection with the MySQL database hosted on cloud, where I saw that a lot of you created the databases. So you can see, you can do that. I've given the credentials also. I'll keep the database alive for at least a couple of days. You can give it a try. Otherwise, you can definitely connect to your local hosted database server. If you do not know if you don't know how to install database, MySQL database, then I would just tell you one small thing. If you go to youtube.com/IvyProSchool, and I'm going to give you a couple of quick video links that will be very, very helpful to all of you, even after today's session. One would be on, give me a moment. There are a lot of videos related to SQL. Okay, I'm looking for video SQL. I've removed the search from here for some reason. This particular database is what, this particular video is what I was looking for. This is the same video that explains, it's the same video that will explain you how to install MySQL database server in your local machine. And then I'm going to give you one more video, AWS Cloud, IvyProSchool, GCP also good cloud platform. You should get one video. So you will get one more video here, which will tell you how to create an AWS account for free. That is, but you'll have to give your debit card, credit card information. And also, this video will also tell you how do you run SQL queries, not just on your local machine, but on Google BigQuery platform as well. That will be a great thing as well to know to take the knowledge one step further. All right. All right. So what are the things that we did? We learned how to create connection with MySQL database hosted on cloud as well as locally. We need URL, you need login ID, you need the database name optionally. And then we did some cleaning of the data. We created a database. We learned all the SQL statements as well, which would help us create a database, create tables in it. And then we learned the table data import wizard of MySQL Workbench. And we learned how to import a CSV data table file into a MySQL database that we just created. And then we also learned how to clean the data, transform the data, and then load the transformed data into the database again, guys. Please do not forget to subscribe to Ivy's YouTube channel. The link to that is, I'll just give it to you again on the chat window, youtube.com/IvyProSchool. What you will get is a couple of things. One, you will get all things on data engineering, data science, as well as you will learn a lot of small tutorial by various industry experts, whereby you learn small parts of data engineering that will be very, very helpful for anybody to learn. And I'll also give you one more video that could be very helpful for you, especially if somebody is trying to make a career in data engineering. So I have only recorded this video a little while ago on how do you make your career as a data engineer. All right, don't forget this picture, which helps you to understand that as a data engineer, you do collection, ingestion, and preparation. Right? Remember, the entire data pipeline is divided into 3 phases. One is data engineering phase, second is analytics and machine learning, and third is delivery or presentation. As a data engineer, you do collection, ingestion, and preparation, and some of those things we saw today. Do not forget to attend tomorrow's workshop. Guys, tomorrow you would get hands-on with Python as well. Using Python, you will learn how to bring the data, large data sets, how to use various cloud tools as well as a data engineer. And day after tomorrow, I'm going to be back again, and I'm going to talk about career opportunities and what are the step-by-step steps that guide that you can follow in order to make a career as a data engineer, guys. My name is Pratik Agarwal. I am one of the co-founders at IvyProSchool, and thank you for attending today's workshop. If you want to get connected with me, then I would suggest just reach out, just Google my name, Pratik Ivy, and you will see the first link, which is the LinkedIn link. And feel free to get connected with me, and I'll be more than happy to accept your connection. I'm connected with more than 10,000 people from the data industry, and I'll be more than happy to be connected with you guys. Thanks a lot. See you guys again. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Take care.